hey, And today feels a bit chaotic, so we're back to the berry. Oh, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 13 of Steins Gate, and last episode, you may have seen it coming. You may have seen Mayuri's downfall coming, but what we're going to do from here is anybody's game at this point. Anybody's game. It definitely feels like a turning point that we've reached this one moment, and this is going to impact everything moving forward, for better or worse. Probably worse, but we'll see what happens. Who knows? Okarin may surprise me, but he's currently on step 6 of the villain's tridecagon, so we'll just see where he goes to from here. I only have 2 comments before going into this, and I want to talk about episode 12. Noel3636 for episode 11 pointed out at 22 minutes and 43 seconds, and I'm obligated to say this because my students tell me I'm obligated to say this anytime this meme comes up. I said in succession, I was like, oh, it was around episode 6, 7. There's your brain rot meme for the day. Done. My obligation is over. Alexander Q for episode 11 also said Okabe is very sweet in his own dorky weird way. I'm glad at least he's only thinking on going to talk to Kurisu's dad and not sending a D-mail to somehow try to fix the issue. Not everything needs to be solved with D-mails. And I thought, well, it's good that he realized, because, he had Ferris and Ruka attempt to fix their issues by sending the D-mail. And he realized with Kurisu, maybe we don't need to use a D-mail. Maybe we could just fix things in the present for the future rather than going back and fixing them in the past. Although it feels now it's a little too late, because you can't really fix things in the present with Mayuri being dead for the future. So our only hope then is just to go back in the past and see if we can fix it that way, but I don't know. So as far as the dub goes, I want to give a special shout out and thank Sunspots, who is a patron over on Patreon, because I've been going to YouTube, and there's been this one person uploading English dub episodes to YouTube, and the first 8 episodes they had uploaded in full episodes. I don't know how they got away with it, but we're going to talk about that here in a second. And then the last couple episodes, they just had 1-minute chunks, and I was like, y'all are gambling to help us out. And then I went to go look up today, actually, episode 12, and their site was gone. And I was like, oh, YouTube got them. So I asked Sunspots. Sunspots got me the English dub episode 12 to look at. So I put out a thing on Discord asking about what we do moving forward. I may ask Sunspots to hook me up with the dub moving forward, because I do like to watch the dub before going into these episodes. It's a nice refresher. It's a nice little reminder, and it's nice to look at it. So as far as episode 12's dub went, the opening scene with Mayuri and Okarin 70 million years ago, she says, you were brought here by a time machine, but you probably won't remember that yet. And I'm like, And then she says, I'm sure I'm the original version of me. I learned that the hard way. I don't know what that means. I guess we're going to find out. And then she says, the bad news is, she's like, I think both of us are going to die 70 million years in the past. The good news is the stuff that makes us who we are will pass down to us 70 million years from now. So there's this interesting, we're talking right now about taking memories from the future, or the present, memories from the present rather, into the past to change the future. But Mayuri is talking about taking memories from the past and taking it to the present to change the future. So that's interesting. So I don't know if somehow Mayuri and Okarin, they have to get back to this many, many million years in the past in order to change their future so that they're better. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that's going to work. We're going to see. We're going to see if they show up in the microplastics of the future. But anyway, Kurisu, a little foreshadowing hint. Whenever Mayuri was talking about her cosplay, Kurisu in the English dub said, you sure cleaned our clock. And I was like, ha 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 ha, foreshadowing. And then Daru about the time leap machine said, wow, this looks like something in an evil genius's armory. Ha 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 ha, possible foreshadowing. We'll see. So they did explain in the dub a little bit better that it does change your memory if you answer the phone. That's when the memories go from the phone that was sent to the future to your brain into the past. So that makes more sense. I watched a horror movie when I was in high school that kind of had this premise, which was funny to think back on. Okarin is clearly going to be the test subject, and they foreshadow it by showing his face immediately as they say they're going to have to test it out on a human. This episode, we might find that out, how that works. We'll see. Kurisu asks for Okabe's opinion, not Kyoma's. Going back and re-listening to that, there's more emphasis in the dub put on that moment. And then Okarin says, if we've really found a way to conquer time, I have to know. But then he thinks about Mayuri and he's like, but our memories aren't worth risking. And Mayuri wants them to turn it over. Some funny things are Kurisu in the grocery store says that grapefruit is the equivalent of black. It goes with everything. I was like, what? And Okarin's like, have you even had a grapefruit before? Although grapefruit will dilute a lot of medicines, so you need to make sure that you don't have grapefruit or grapefruit juice when you take some medicines or they won't work. Kurisu also struggled to get the Dr. Pepper, and I wondered looking back if that was like maybe her not being on the up and up as much as she thinks. I don't know. Okabe also hates olives apparently in the English dub, and that makes me love him all the more because we are on the same footing. And then just as far as making us feel as horrible as we can about Mayuri getting shot, throughout the entire episode, Kurisu keeps calling Mayuri sweetie, which made me think of Doctor Who. Which made me think of River Song and Doctor Who, which applies very well to this, especially if you're shipping Kurisu and Okarin. Okarin kept calling her my dove, and I was like, stop it. Even Moika was like, kill the little one. And I was like, she has a name! It's Mayuri! But then also, maybe I talked about this in the discussion last week, but I'm like, did they just shoot her in the head? Because it didn't look like there was any blood or anything. So I'm like, did they just literally shoot her in the head? I think they did. So that's terrifying. Anyway, I'm really excited to see what we're going to get with this series. So this episode, I'm honestly terrified about because I have no clue what's to come, but I guess we'll find out. So real quick before we start, I want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank you all so much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it, but I want to give a shout out to the philanthropy tier because they get mentioned in my videos. So to Alex Cornejo, to Be Happy, to Bisa, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, to Ichu, to Eric, to Fisho, to Ghostly Turnip, to Elfreya, Liam Polzel, Lyndon, Murphy, Willie Morris, Translucent Men, Sunspots, Shimoyama, James, and Daniel. Thank you all so much for your support. And to everybody that supports me, whether it's on Patreon or YouTube, I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yep. So yeah. We might as well get ready because I'm not ready, but there's no point in holding back. Last week I said I was immediately going to get into this episode, and then this week I was like, actually I'm going to hold off. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right into episode 13 of Steins Gate. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. At one point in this episode, I was waiting for just Benny Hill music to start playing. And like every time Mayuri dies, it's like ning 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 ning. Like they're just trying to like escape and evade the hand of fate that has decided, nope, Mayuri's gotta die. I'm like, oh my god. So, is it the will of the cosmos that Mayuri has to go in order? Is this unavoidable? I guess is a question that we need to ask ourselves. So, in this, Mayuri at first is killed by Moika. She is shot by Moika, and it seemed in the episode like Moika didn't want to shoot her, but that she had to shoot her. Like it had to happen in order, because what ends up happening is she's killed by Moika, and then that leads Okarin to get to the time leap machine, aided by Amane, which we'll talk about, and Kurisu. The two of them helped him get to the time leap machine, and then thus he was able to get all that to work out. So that all worked out in that, and then went back to try and prevent the party, but he goofed because he forgot that the train lines were down, and so Mayuri and him ended up at the station where Moika and her men were located, because it's become clear in this episode that it wasn't just that Moeka and Cern have been staking out the lab. They've basically been following Okarin wherever he goes, and they've been honing in on him. So I don't know if they have a tracking device. I don't know if they put a tracking device in his phone. I don't know if there's one with Mayuri. I don't know if that's how they keep finding where they are, because they've tracked Mayuri somehow. I don't know. I don't know yet. So that's something. But at the station, Cern was there. And then we're going to get back to it when we go back to this episode. Mayuri ends up getting killed by Moeka again. Only this time it was death by car. I was like, oh my God. There were only two parts of this episode that I kind of like tilted my head and went, show. One was somehow Okarin escaped from all of the CERN henchmen and Moeka and made it back to the lab before they did and was able to use the device. Somehow he made it back on his own and escaped all of them and outran them, even though he's been running up until that point. We'll let it go. We'll let it be anime logic. That part I kind of tilted my head and went, really? He got there by himself, just hunky-dory, and had enough time to boot up the time machine, the time leak machine? I guess it's easier to use once you hook it up. So Okarin does the time leap machine. I'll get this acronym right. The time leap machine all by himself. He didn't have any help for that one. Although he did tell Kurisu that he'd tell her more about it later, but that he'd use the time leap machine. Doesn't matter. She doesn't know about it anymore because he's gone back again a third time. And this time he's like, well, we'll just solve the problem by just cutting to the chase. We won't even go find him on A. We won't even involve anybody else. I'm just going to take you straight to the subway. And I kept thinking that CERN was going to be at the subway because CERN was at the train station. It seemed like CERN, and who knows, that person that was in the car when he was like on the corner might not have been with CERN at all. It could have been just him being paranoid, right? But I think somebody's watching me. Like, that was just playing the whole time. So they decide to go to the subway to get away from the trains because they know the trains aren't going to work, everything to get out. And then somehow, for some reason, Nye is there. Why is Nye by herself? We don't see Braun. Nye runs ahead. Or was away from Braun, who knows, runs ahead and somehow ends up pushing Mayuri into the subway. It was like a damn Final Destination death. That was the only, okay, Okarin getting back to the lab after the second death, I was like, I don't exactly know how he did it, but maybe the episode was pressed for time. Maybe the light novel goes into more detail about it. Who knows? But her dramatically falling into the subway felt like something out of a Danmai. It did not feel real. I was like, what? It was very melodramatic. It almost took me out of the moment. It was a little distracting, but that's okay. That's my only beef with the episode is her dramatically, cartoonishly falling into the subway. I was like, dear God. Also, very notable is that two things notable about this whole scenario that bug me. One is like the idea of Okarin becoming desensitized to Mayuri's death. He's trying to prevent it, but by the end of this episode, it seemed like it was becoming less of a, I have to protect Mayuri and prevent her death, and becoming more of, I'm going to do it because I have to, and because you're preventing me from doing it. It's not the fact that it felt there was a twinge of him not doing it because he loves her, but more because you're preventing me as a scientist from doing this. Like, it started taking on that vibe. The other thing that was bothering me is in both instances, you have seen not only the desensitization of seeing Mayuri die. That part's a bit chilling. The villain tridecagon. Here we go. I also want to go back to said villain tridecagon and see if we can go back to that and see if there's any next steps that we've been able to get to. We'll see. But anyway. Then we have the idea that in each time he went back, granted, you saw your best friend from childhood, this girl that you absolutely love, like as a sister, platonically, romantically, whatever. You've seen her again for the first time after watching her get brutally shot in the face. And he didn't hug her. I know that second time he was really like concerned and in the moment, like, let's just get out of here, let's go. But like, if I had gone back into the past and the person I loved the most had died in front of me, I would have gave him a hug and been like, hey, I'm sorry, this is out of characteristic. And maybe it's a Japanese thing where it's like, we don't want to touch you because that's culturally weird. But I'd be like, I don't care. I just saw this person die. I'm going to give you a hug because it's the first time I've seen you and you're alive. Oh my God, you're in the flesh. You're in this moment. Oh my God. And even if you were too paranoid that first time and too in your head, I would have at least the second time done it, but he doesn't do that then. And it almost, begs the question of if it's your time, it's your time. And that is a context. I know a lot of people are like, they want to know exactly when they're going to die. My mom is not a deeply religious person, but she's kind of, I don't know. She's very pseudo-religious. I don't know how deeply religious she is, but she's always had a thing of when it's your time, it's your time. It's not going to matter. When it's your time to go, it's decided. It's your time to go. And there's not much. I mean, she's like, she doesn't fear of flying and things like that. She's like, well, if it's my time, it's my time. And I'm like, And that's kind of a way to look at it, rather than being afraid of something going wrong during something, saying, well, if it is my time to go, it's my time to go. I'm going to live in the moment. And that kind of begs us to ask, like, Mayuri and Okarin, both times he's trying to go back, he's trying to prevent this thing from happening. But rather than prevent it from happening, he kind of learns from the first time he does it and changes things a little bit, but it almost becomes more manipulative. And it's like, instead of him just savoring this time with Mayuri and trying to think it through, he's so urgent, he's forgetting that the person he's trying to save is right in front of him. He's getting more time with that person and he's not savoring it at all. He kind of does. I can't say that fully. He does hold her hand and there's that moment at the train station. We'll get through, we'll go back through this episode. Technically, step 6 in the villain's tridecon has become a self-experiment in research or obsessions. That is step 6. Step 7 is split into different personas due to said experiments. I think we're heading that way. Because the kind-hearted Okarin definitely was kind of pushed aside for the paranoid, very urgent, like, let's get to it. I gotta save you, Okarin. And I feel like with each time Mayuri dies, it's just making him angrier and more desensitized to losing her. And I don't know how I feel about that. But we'll see. So this episode is called Metaphysics Necrosis. We should talk about what necrosis is, because I feel like that is a very important thing to note. So necrosis, looking it up, is from the ancient Greek word for death. The death of metaphysics, you say. The death of the time machine, you say. We'll see. I guess we ought to just have a broad definition of metaphysics. If it's just being called it. It's the branch. So metaphysics, we need to look at first of all what metaphysics is. It's a branch of philosophy examining the basic structure of reality. So basically the death of reality as we know it, which seems pretty apt because reality, if we look at it this way, we have this concept of looking at reality as just, it's this process of events, right? It's this process of events and it goes in a line. Now, is time linear? Well, no, I like the idea of a nonlinear history where it's more of like it's more of a spider's web. There's overlapping elements, but you are pushing forward at the same time in time, right? It's like a spider web it's like a 3-dimensional spider web that's constantly moving forward. Is how I would describe nonlinear history. But it is always moving forward, right? You don't go backwards, right? Even if you're in retrograde, you're not going backwards in time. So if we're talking about necrosis of reality, if we're talking about this idea of existence and reality, there is, things that happen. There are nodes in time, and Okarin is trying to disrupt and prevent a specific node from happening, which is a big no-no in time travel. You can't stop specific nodes from happening once they've happened. Some philosophers, including Aristotle, designate metaphysics as first philosophy to suggest it is more fundamental than other forms of philosophical inquiry. It encompasses a wide range of general and abstract topics, investigates the nature of existence, all the entities that they have in common, division into categories. A influential division is between particulars and universals. Particulars are individual entities like a specific apple. Universals are general features like the color red. Modal metaphysics examines what it means for something to be possible or necessary. So modal metaphysics mainly going like, is the death of Mayuri something that is a constant? It has to happen. And I think, unfortunately, it might be. And that might be something we need to talk about in this episode, unfortunately. So metaphysics also explores the concept of space, time, and change, their connection to causality, and the laws of nature. And others include how the mind and matter are related, how everything in the world is predetermined, and whether there's free will or not. Well, perhaps. So this concept of causality and free will, got a little phlegm there. Surely this berry Dr. Pepper will help clear my throat. So yes, I would say there's an interesting discussion here concerning like, is the death of Mayuri a node that has to take place in some form or another, right? My question is, the person with CERN that is telling Moika to kill Mayuri, why? Why is FB? FB has to involve Mayuri's death. Because she killed Mayuri because of FB. So I don't know what FB is, but somehow Mayuri's death is connected to that and has to occur, right? So we have this idea of causality and free will. Can we prevent her death? Ooh, I don't know about that. We're going to find out. But so that's a little look into metaphysics, as it were. And we might go back to metaphysics here in a little bit. But I feel like we've talked about it a bit, but I want to go into necrosis. So it's a form of cell injury, which results in the premature death of cells in living tissue by autolysis. The term necrosis came about in the mid-19th century and is commonly attributed to German pathologist Rudolf Virchow, who is often regarded as one of the founders of modern pathology. Necrosis is caused by factors external to the cell or tissue, such as infection or trauma. It's caused by infection or trauma. What? Which can result in an unregulated digestion of cell components. In contrast, apoptosis is a naturally occurring, programmed, and targeted cause of cellular death. While apoptosis often provides beneficial effects to the organism, necrosis is almost always detrimental and can be fatal. So they have this little cute description of what happens with either. So you have this like normal cell. Here's the normal cell. Here's the nucleus of the cell, if you ever did like grade school science. And there's these little organelles that are inside of it. I always did like this part of biology. I like cell stuff. That was fun. So either you have one or two things happen. You have either the apoptosis or you have necrosis. So in apoptosis, what happens is these little blebs, which I love the word blebs, these little blebs form, right? Your cell's starting to break down. These little blebs, it's starting to, the membrane around is starting to like become a little bit unstable. And so the nucleus begins to break apart. So we're going to make it look more like a starfish. The nucleus begins to break apart and the DNA breaks into small pieces and the organelles of DNA start to go into the blebs, right? If it looks like a starfish, that is intentional because what ends up happening is from there, these break into new cells that start to repopulate themselves. So they kind of do become like a starfish and then these cells will become more cells. So it's kind of like in apoptosis, it's a natural breakdown, but it becomes something else. Like for example, when a seed breaks down, it can become something that create more seeds and the cycle of life continues, right? It's a continuation of life by breaking down. So it's a death that breaks down cells, but also furthers a life cycle. So it seems kind of paradoxical, but it's the way of the circle of life, if you will. Then you have necrosis. Again, you have the same bleb. You have the blebs like you did before with the organelles. The difference is the blebs, instead of breaking apart, they fuse into this larger part and no organelles are in the bleb. So instead of breaking apart, it just becomes this wonky thing where they all kind of start clustering and gathering together, right? Instead of breaking apart. And then the cell membrane ruptures and releases the cell's content, and the organelles are not functional. So it ends up kind of being like a volcano or like an abscess where it ruptures the nucleus and all the organelles go here and it all spills apart. Nothing happens, nothing is furthered, and that's the end of it. So I find this interesting because what I feel like is happening with this episode, because it's called Metaphysics Necrosis, is the process of life in itself is that with the process of life normally, you have like a timeline where A goes to B, goes to C. But again, not everything is just so simple and linear. You also have like, well, all of these happen and all of these happen and like these things happen and blah, blah, blah. So, for example, with Mayuri's death, what would normally happen under normal circumstances if you didn't use the time leap machine is that you have this disruption, and Mayuri's death is creating this disruption where things are happening to different people. So like we talked last episode, there was the question of, well, what will Kurisu do? Will she work for CERN, or will she escape and go back to America? What about Daru? Will he die? Will something happen to him? What about Amane? Will she leave and something do that? If we had not used the time machine, if we did not use the time leap machine, and things were able to happen as they normally do in the life cycle in metaphysics, what would end up happening is that, yes, this death event, this life event occurred and it disrupted everything and it broke everyone up, but everyone's still alive. Their stories continue. Things keep happening. Is Mayuri's death a horrific tragedy? Yeah. All deaths are horrific tragedies, at least to someone. So yeah, they are bad. But here, what's happening is that instead of just letting the cycle move forward, what we're doing is when there's the disruption, Okarin's like, oh, well, no, we'll just go back. We'll just go back and change it. We'll go back and change it. We'll keep, this is all this here felt like the bleb. This was the necrosis bleb. It's like, it's all tumultuous. Nothing is changing. We're just compounding and getting everything more and more riled up. And then what ends up happening is it just bursts, and then the timeline, the time frame, everyone's existence is messed up. Possibly. That's just my interpretation of it. Will we find out more as we go? I don't know. But that's just, the necrosis, this whole thing with necrosis is fascinating to me. It's really, really interesting. But yeah, it says cellular death due to necrosis does not follow the apoptotic signal transduction pathway, but receptors are activated and result in the loss of membrane integrity and an uncontrolled release of cell death in the extracellular space. That kind of feels like this happened with the subway. The subway was just beep beep. Can't. I should feel really bad about Mayuri dying. And the car death floored me. The car death when Moika hit her with the car, that floored me. My jaw was on the ground. The subway death, I was like, all right, you're starting to get a little comical, show. This is not funny. I should not be finding Mayuri's death in this way humorous. Do not do this. But I have a really dark sense of humor, so I was like, no. But anyway, so it says yes, what else happens here? The excess collateral damage inhibits the healing process. Yes! Thus, untreated necrosis results in a buildup of decomposing dead tissue and cell debris at or near the site of cell death. Gangrene is an example, and they tie the Black Plague to it and things like that. The bubonic plague was tied to it as well. Yeah, so, I mean, essentially, this buildup is probably like every time that Okarin keeps going back and tries to prevent her death, it's just this buildup over and over again of all these factors, and it's just going to pop like an abscess at some point. Anyway, I think that's interesting. Cool. Glad we got to talk about that. So we had the whole death there. Like Okarin, the actor Miyano Mamoru. I'm taking another sip of this. It's not spiked, I swear. It's like midday. Miyano Mamoru does such a good job with this scene. I can't wait to hear J. Michael Tatum do it. But Kurisu said for Okabe to get away from her that she was going to shoot her, and he's like, I'll make you pay for this. And she doesn't respond, and that's when Amane shows up, right? Now, I don't know if the mark on the guy's neck, like that image means anything. I don't know if it does or not. I feel like maybe we should make note of that for later on. It looks like a dagger. Looks like a dagger. This is going to look like a penis, but it looks like a dagger. No, see, they're like little horns. That looks like a medieval penis, but it's okay. You all know what I mean. Yeah. I don't know. They did a point of noting that line, so I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything or not. But I do love the fact of when Amane and Moika have the guns to both their heads. I was sitting there going, the two people I was most suspect of in this entire series pointing guns at each other, like, come on. So also Amane has skills as a soldier. Let's be real. Why does she have skills? Why did she come back? Why did she come back? She thinks that that was a big question I had throughout this. Her whole MO this entire time has been suspecting that Kurisu was with CERN. And she wanted Kurisu to get away. Why? Is it because Kurisu's dad is working with CERN? And maybe her being involved, like, escalated the process? And Amane found that out and was like, you need to, like, maybe that's why she thinks she's with CERN because of her dad? I don't know. But if she didn't want her there, and she's there, and she was needed to help start, which I guess Kurisu wasn't really needed to start the process, though, because Okarin goes back and does it on his own. So, but I wonder why she went back. Why did she go back? I guess she felt bad and wanted to save them, and was like, let's get the timeline. Now, I love the part where Amane said 42 CRT to let Kurisu know that the TV's on. Okay, she went back downstairs to turn the TV on to make sure that they could use it was the lifter so they could use the time leap machine. So if she wasn't there previously when Okarin goes back the second time around, but here's the thing. Okay, that time it might have worked because when Okarin in the second timeline, when he goes back the first time this episode, he stumbled across Amane and was like, hey, I'm taking Mayuri away. Don't worry about the party. Amane might have gone back to the TV shop and turned on the 42-inch TV, and it was on when he went back the second time this episode. So that could have technically worked. I think that would have been all right. I don't know what we're going to do for this time around, but oh my gosh. So she was going to fire. I mean, she was not going to fire at the machine itself, right? Because it wasn't the point of you getting the machine itself. Wasn't that the point for you to get it? I'm curious. So they go back into where the machine is. They manage to fire off the smoke bomb to distract everybody. And Okarin does that. He pulls the pin to distract it and she's firing while Kurisu's trying to get it loaded up for him. And she's like, Okabe, and he's like, I'll go. And she's like, but if it fails, and I feel bad because she's got tears in her eyes. Like, if it fails, it's gonna, they're all gonna die. And he's like, do it now. And as he's going back, that's when she gets shot. Yeah, like, oh, it shot her shoulder. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we can't go back to that future. It doesn't exist anymore. But he manages to make it back. And the first time around, well, we have the preview with Mayuri first. So, Mayuri's grandmother died, and he basically took her hostage. Little tiny Okarin looks freaking adorable. Him standing in the rain, getting soaked, watching her at the grandmother's grave. He looks so cute with his little hair and everything. This little scrawny chicken-legged little boy looking adorable. She always had her grandmother's pocket watch in her hand. I felt like such an asshole. I felt like such an asshole when I was like, oh, why'd she have a pocket watch? What teenager in the 2010s has a pocket watch? It was her grandma's. I feel so bad. I felt so bad. But yeah, so she was waiting for her grandmother to come and get her. And they said one day there was a ray of light. And like the rainfall slows down. And to Okarin, when he sees it, it was the kind called, what is he called there? Rembrandt lighting. So she drops the umbrella, and in that moment, I don't think we are literally supposed to take it as Mayuri was going to harm herself, but Okarin being a kid, like they were in grade school. The fact that he in grade school called it Rembrandt lighting is amazing. But he in that moment recognized that Mayuri was really sad about her grandmother's death and needed some support. And he's like, it felt like the light was drawing her up, like she was going to disappear. So he established from very early on, and I love Okarin, like hugging her and holding her close. I needed that in this episode. I needed Okarin giving her a hug like he did here, only in adult form. I needed that in this episode, and he didn't do it. And I get why he didn't do it, but it was just, my soul was wanting him to do that. But it's very good to get confirmation of how much Okarin cares about Mayuri, how important she is to him, and how much this loss is affecting him and why he's going to the lengths that he is to save her. That is very much needed. Also, something about the hostage situation that I love that gets explained is he's like, no, you're going to be my hostage and I'll use you for human experiments. And that may sound creepy on the surface, but he said the words that came out of my mouth were from a sci-fi show that we had watched together. So the moment he said that, I was like, okay, all this makes sense now. Why Mayuri is okay being his hostage. She watched the show with him. She knows that what he's saying is he doesn't want her to leave this earth because he loves her. And this is his way of saying that. And she's in on the gag too. And I'm like, okay, that all makes sense now, right? Some mad scientist screaming like an idiot, and all the mad scientist stuff all makes sense now of why he wants to be a mad scientist, because it's playing on an inside joke that him and her have together, and they just kept the inside joke going until it became manifest. So that's crazy. I love it. And then she sees, so Mayushi is your hostage, right? Then I guess I can't go, right? So they go back in time. He drops the phone and he goes back and has the new memories. And it's back before the pizza party in this dimly lit office space because they don't believe in using electricity for lamps. But yeah. So Okarin spends most of this episode, or at least this first time around, trying to go back and finding her. Trying to call her. She doesn't answer. He's like, this is different than D-mail. So we got the kid doing the bullet train like twice in a row. That part was creepy. That part was very scary. I'm curious to see if we're going to get more of that again. And he goes back saying like, I can't go to the police. Nobody's going to believe me. So he goes to find, I felt bad for Ruka, both timelines in this episode, because Ruka's just sweeping along at her dad's place, minding her own business. And here comes Okarin being freaked out, and Ruka has no clue why. I felt bad for Ruka in this episode. But he goes to find Mayuri again. Ruka's freaked out. I like that we get the lamppost. It's like 9 minutes and 18 seconds in. The dual lamppost where there's two lights, but it's like, either way, it doesn't matter. She's going to get killed again. So he finds her he talks to Kurisu first. And he's like, y'all need to get out of the lab. And she's like, don't do anything weird. And he's like, I know. I'm not worried about Okarin doing anything weird at this point. I'm not worried about him doing anything weird. I'm worried about him making a decision and doubling down and it just making him more and more desensitized and less human. He's going to become more of a mad scientist and obsessed with trying to bring her back. Not because I fear that him bringing her back is going to be less and less about him loving her as a person and wanting to spend time with her, and more about just preventing this thing from happening, but not taking into consideration Mayuri's feelings or how anyone else around him is reacting to this as well, or who it could put in jeopardy if he's so hell-bent on this. Because he, again, all the foreshadowing when she's like, hey, after this is all over, you need to tell me about this. And he's like, I will. I'm like, if Okarin was really paying attention to Mayuri in this, the moment, if he uses the time leap machine again and goes back, he would immediately tell her what's going on. But here's the thing. If he did, if he did use a time leap machine again, and I think he will, and he went back to go find Mayuri again and save her from her grisly fate, my thing is, if he actually told her about what was going to happen to her, she would probably say, okay, I know I'm going to go. So let's spend this afternoon and have a great time. And then if I go, I go. But like we've established a few episodes ago, Mayuri, is selfless. And she's like, yeah, if it's my fate, if it's my time to go, let's just enjoy this time, the two of us together, and share it. And then I'll walk into the light. I'll do my stargaze pose, and we're just going to go from there. But we've established within the last few episodes that Okarin, even though he's helping people, it is kind of for himself. There is a little bit of selfishness there. And he's doing it because he wants her around. He's not really considering Mayuri in all of this. He's like, no, I want her around. We have to bring her back. And it's like, at one point, is Mayuri going to be like, but if it's my fate to go, it's my fate to go. And I don't think Okarin's going to accept that. I think he's going to be like, no, I can play the hand of God. I'll choose whether you live or die. And I'm like, I don't think that's how this works. I don't think that's how this works. But we'll see. So then Amane sends him over to talk to Mayuri, and she's like, what's going on? And then he sees her. Again, there's a lot of parallels in this episode, like her with the hand up to Venus and everything, all the foreshadowing, all of that. And then I wanted him in this moment when he saw her to like run up to her and hug her. Like, give her a hug. Like, you love her. Like, just come on. Instead, he just drags her away. And she's like, I don't get what's going on. So in this moment, Okarin, rather than stopping and explaining and considering her feelings, he's like, no, I have to save you. It has to be me. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. What is going on? So it is very, I feel like all of his efforts are going to always be in vain because he's not going about it the right way, if there even is a right way. And she's like, I got scared. And again, I feel like that hug in the cemetery at the beginning of this episode with young Okarin giving Mayuri the hug, that's the Okarin that she loves. The Okarin that she loves is this man that is just a little bit odd, a little bit caring, but one that is full of compassion and love. And my fear is kind of what Mayuri's fear has been this entire time, the more these experiments went on and on and on, is that Okarin, his kind of like this selfish Icarus desire to be this mad scientist, it's like he's taking the joke a little too far. They had this inside joke about being a mad scientist and holding her hostage. Now he is kind of holding her hostage, or trying to, right? Now, instead of just pretending to be a mad scientist, which was the joke, he's kind of starting to get there where he keeps going back, trying to prevent her death. And in doing so, he's kind of making her a literal hostage in time. She can't just move on. She keeps getting stuck there, and he keeps going back trying to save her. And, is that considering Mayuri's feelings in all of this? We're probably going to talk about that. We're probably going to discuss it. But yeah, they get to the train station and he forgets. He's like, shit, I forgot the train stations. We don't know when they're going to start again. And he's like, And then this guy comes up beside him. Is he the guy that was in the car? I can't see because it's too dark. But he has a gun pointed to his head and he has a hat on. And again, the repeat. When he goes back in time and they're at the subway, he's holding her hand. He holds her hand the same way in this. Did he hold her hand in the apartment? He might have. I can't remember. He's like, why are you staying there? So they managed to run out. And he's like, run as fast as you can. And so then, okay, I want to keep track. So they ran from the one guy. Then there was this second guy that got him on the ground. And he's like, go quickly, run. And so she turns, there's another guy coming. She turns to run. And then what happens? She gets hit by Moika in the car. Oh my God. Gets hit by Moika in the car. And I'm with Okarin, like, what the fudge? And it literally is, Moika gets out in the black leather, answers her phone, says that Mayuri was the one who died. Okabe-kun. Okabe Rintaro has been captured. And then he screams for Mayuri, gets the one guy off, and manages to run back. And I guess he just ran back to the apartment and they didn't get him captured. They didn't capture him very well. Okay, the sand has stopped at that point. Okay. My question with that whole scene is, it felt for a moment like Moeka was talking to the phone and talking to CERN like Okabe would talk to the organization on the phone, or to whoever he was talking to the phone about the organization. It had that same vibe, so that was interesting. But yeah, that was the one thing, like how he got from the one, because there was two guys there, so how did he get away from the one guy and the other guy and make it all the way back to the apartment? Not important, he went back. And the thing that was chilling was when he goes back the second time, his attitude, he's not paranoid. He's not freaking out. Instead, he's like, okay, we're not going to have the thing tonight. I'm going to be calm, cool, collected. I'm going to go talk to Mayuri. Everything's fine. He's like, it doesn't matter if I was acting weird. I just need to get them away from the lab. And it's like his eyes seem dimmer and dimmer. And I'm like, Kurisu said, don't be weird. And this time, instead of talking to him on the phone, she texts him instead. So it's like, are we going from talking in person to talking on the phone to texting to her not being present and him leaving her behind? I don't know. It felt like the communication with him and everyone else was like devolving away, right? Or was dissolving. Because instead of seeing Ruka face to face, he calls her ahead of time, which was probably a good idea. And he keeps Mayuri here. We have the kid with the train all over again. And then he's like, we're just going to go on a trip. He's like, we'll go on a trip together. I like that Ruka was like, you two going on a trip together by yourselves? Like, that seems kind of like stuff a couple would do. I'm like, they're siblings, Ruka. They're practically siblings. I wanted you to come with me for a bit. And she's like, well, I like Mayuri so polite. She's like, well, Fubuki is my friend, and I can only put her off for so long, and then I really need to go help her with cosplay. And Okarin's like, yeah, we'll worry about that later. Again, he doesn't hug her. Or, like, he doesn't hug her or tell her how much he cares about her or any of that. If I was afraid she was going to die, I know you want to save her, but I would at least tell her. Like, at that moment when Mayuri's like, goodbye, and says that, like, I just... He's like, we'll take the subway. And again, they're holding hands the same way. And she's like, it's been a really long time since, we've hung out together like this. And he's about to go over across the street, and that's when he sees the person in the car looking out that way. Like, it could have been the guy at the train tracks. And he's like, nope, actually, we're going to go to the subway. I was freaked out the whole time they were in the subway. I was like, nope. I kept thinking somebody was going to come at them from the back, like the person on the train tracks did too, up at the train station. And so Kurisu says, did something happen? Tell me later, okay? And he's like, okay, Kurisu. So when they get down here amongst all these people and they're on the edge of the train tracks, and the moment Mayuri was like, my watch isn't working anymore, I was like, it's doing the exact same thing at the same time that happened at the apartment, that happened at the train station. It's happening here. You can't, I'm like, I don't know if Okarin realizes it's a node that can't be stopped. The universe is going to try to correct itself and make it happen. It's like, ah! So yeah. And then I kept thinking somebody was going to come up from behind, put a gun at Okarin's back. And he's like, it's fine. And she's like, Okarin, I have a lot of things I want to ask. And I'm like, how much foreshadow are we going to layer or are we going to slather on before the end of this? In exchange, when this is over, I want you to tell me everything. And he says, yeah. And they're holding hands, and I love that he, like, squeezes her hand even harder. That part was sweet. I will say this. As much as I wanted him to hug her, that part where he squeezes her hand, and he's like, yeah, I'll tell you everything when it's over. Will you, sir? Will you, sir? Maybe you should do it before it's over. Maybe you should tell her everything before it's over. But him holding her hand and squeezing it, I'm like, how did he lose her hand? How did she let go? And then she says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't help you. I don't know. Mayuri seems so foreshadowy and wise beyond her years in this moment because I'm like, she's like, I'm sorry I can't help you. I'm like, it felt so ethereal, like beyond human when she was talking to him in that moment. And I don't know what to make of it. But then he's like, oh, it's okay. We'll have a party sometime. And then as it's coming, there is the one girl, Nai. she's running and sees Mayuri. This was the only part that I was like, no. And she's like, sometime, for sure. And we see the train coming. It's almost there. And then she says, Mayuri Oni-chan. And she trips in that moment. She trips and bumps into Mayuri and pushes her. And Okarin goes of her hand. He lets go of her hand and she falls into the subway. Like, no. Nope. Nope. I think maybe it was the way that she fell into the subway. Like, normally you just fall. Like, if you push somebody, you'd fall down. I was expecting the show, because the moment you're like, oh my God, Nai's going to trip and cause her to fall into the subway tracks. I was expecting her to fall down, because that's how gravity works. That's how gravity works. Gravity has you fall down into the tracks, and she kind of like floats like Princess Peach in Mario 2 into the front of the train because it looks more aesthetic. I was like, no. It's the only part I could not take that seriously. I was like, no. And then everybody's just like, what the hell just happened? Somebody fall into the subway at the last minute? And of course, Nai is emotionally traumatized. She's like, I just wanted to surprise her. She gets the fishbowl eyes. I did not have Nai getting the fishbowl eyes on my, bingo card for this series. And then he grabs the watch and Okarin. At this point, I'm a little bit more worried that Okarin is less, sad and emotionally traumatized than just, chilling and numb and saying, what does he say there? I will save Mayuri. And I'm like, ooh. I was like, I don't know. I don't know at this point if you're going to be able to do that. I don't know. Did we go backwards in that moment? Because, yeah. Oh, it is going backwards. Yes. Okay. I will save Mayuri. And the time goes backwards. Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense now. Okay. Yeah, I feel like Mayuri's this node that you can't stop her death. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think anything he does is going to work. I think it's just going to make things worse and worse and worse. I don't know. I make fun of that one moment at the end here, but it was a really good episode. I was like, ooh, it's setting up how very dark and dire and not good this entire scenario is. I want to say one thing too, and I noted this on the Discord, and I will say this. Someone had in the Discord, and I don't remember who it was, but they were just like, yeah, my one friend, they stopped watching after episode 12. So I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that. Obviously, Mayuri's death is a turning point, and if you really like her character, I feel like this is going to upset people, and probably the rest of the story is maybe not going to... I don't know how it's going to affect. I will say, and I'm going to try not to spoil Death Note if you've not seen Death Note, but this episode 12 to 13, this transition reminds me a little bit about a story arc in Death Note, and a lot of people don't like that story arc. I loved it. I was eating that up. I loved it. I love Death Note, and I was loving it so much. But people were trying to tell me that it was bad in the comments, and I'm like, why don't you let a reactor enjoy it and have fun? And I'm sorry you don't like it, but don't spoil it for me who's never seen it before. Wait till I've watched it, and then we can talk about it afterwards. And that's kind of how I feel about this series. We've obviously made a big turning point in Mayuri dying. So what I don't want to hear in the comments is, I don't like it from here on. After episode 12, the show sucks. Or something like, no, I don't want to know that. Save it for the end. Save it for the end of the season. Just wait. Be patient. Make a document somewhere online and save all your thoughts. And at the end of the series, we can have a big old hashing about it. But I won't read comments, and I'll make sure the mods know I will not read comments that try to give me a perspective about how they feel about the second half of the season, because I don't want to know. I'm going in blind, so please respect this content creator and their wishes. Thank you. But anyway, I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below about this. Maybe you thought the whole subway death was insane. I thought that it wouldn't have felt so hokey if she had just fell forward into the subway. That would have been chilling and terrifying. But the aesthetic, her leaping in front of it, it was fine. It was fine. I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't expecting Nai to be there of all places, but what can we do? So anyway, I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm going to finish this Berry Dr. Pepper, And wait till the next comments come in, and then we'll be on episode 14 of Steins Gate. And I'll see you there. Bye.